The sky above Merex 9 burned orange and crimson as the third sun set behind the jagged mountain range. Jonas Raynor wiped sweat from his brow, leaving a streak of engine grease across his forehead. His engineering station had been overrun with damaged equipment since the ambush began 12 hours ago. He wasn't a soldier, never had been, never wanted to be. But as one of the few maintenance engineers still alive in this sector, he was arguably more valuable than most of the fighting forces. "Hey, Raynor, I need this pulse rifle operational in 10 minutes or we're all dead." Captain Hendricks slammed the weapon onto Jonas's workbench, sending tools clattering to the floor. Jonas nodded, not bothering to explain that repairing complex weaponry wasn't quite like changing a light bulb. "I'll do my best, sir." The captain had already turned away, barking orders into his comm unit. Jonas sighed and began disassembling the rifle. At 29, he should have been designing spacecraft components at a cushy Earth-based corporation. Instead, he was here on this godforsaken rock, keeping the coalition forces alive with duct tape and improvisation. The ground shook as another bombardment struck nearby. Jonas steadied himself against the workbench. The temporary engineering station had been set up in what remained of a mining facility, the prefabricated walls already beginning to buckle under repeated attacks. "Engineering section, evacuate immediately. Structural integrity compromised." The automated warning blared through the comm system. Jonas grabbed his toolkit and the half-repaired rifle, sprinting toward the exit as ceiling panels crashed down around him. He burst out into the chaos of the battlefield, disoriented by smoke and the relentless flash of weapons fire. The evacuation route to the main encampment was cut off by enemy forces, with no choice. Jonas turned and ran toward the restricted zone, the ruins of an ancient temple complex that both sides had agreed to preserve. The sounds of battle faded as he ventured deeper into the ruins. Stone columns, etched with symbols no human had fully deciphered, loomed above him. Jonas slowed his pace, catching his breath and trying to get his bearings. He activated his locator beacon, but the signal was blocked by the dense mineral composition of the ruins. "Great," he muttered to himself, "stranded in the one place I'm not supposed to be." A faint sound caught his attention, something between a groan and a mechanical whir. Jonas approached cautiously, peering around a fallen column. What he saw made him freeze. A figure lay trapped beneath a collapsed structure, gleaming armor reflecting the dying light. Not human armor, this was something else entirely. Bioorganic plates shifted and pulsed like they were alive, conforming to a distinctly feminine form. The being's face was obscured by a helmet that seemed fused to the rest of the suit, but Jonas could hear labored breathing. It was a Valthari warrior, one of the coalition's most fearsome allies, though they kept to themselves and rarely interacted with humans. Their species had joined the war reluctantly, bound by ancient pacts rather than shared ideology. The warrior's armor was crushed on one side, a viscous blue fluid leaking from the seams. The liquid glowed faintly in the growing darkness. Jonas hesitated. He was no combatant, and the Valthari were notoriously proud and unpredictable. But he couldn't leave anyone to die, enemy or ally. "Hold on," he called out, approaching slowly with his hands visible. "I'm here to help." The warrior's head turned sharply, and a series of clicks and hisses emerged from the helmet, translation software struggling to process her language. "Stay back, human," the synthesized voice finally managed. Jonas ignored the warning, assessing the collapsed structure. It was a precarious jumble of stone and metal, with the warrior pinned beneath a support beam that had to weigh several tons. "I'm an engineer," he explained, setting down his toolkit. "I can get you out, but you need to stay still." The warrior tried to reach for something at her side, likely a weapon. but the movement only caused more of the structure to shift dangerously. She went still, perhaps realizing her predicament. Jonas worked methodically, using a portable scanner to identify stress points in the debris. The Valthari watched him silently as he rigged a makeshift lever system using pieces from his toolkit and parts of the surrounding ruins. "This is going to hurt," he warned, positioning himself to apply force to the lever. "But it's the only way." He counted down from 3, then pushed with all his strength. The beam lifted slightly, just enough for the warrior to pull herself free with a pained sound that needed no translation. As soon as she was clear, Jonas released the lever and the structure collapsed fully. The Valthari attempted to stand but immediately crumpled back to the ground. Her armor, normally a seamless second skin, was clearly malfunctioning, panels shifting erratically around the damaged area. Jonas approached cautiously. "You're still injured. Let me help." "No. Touch," the warrior managed, her translator struggling. "Sacred armor. You'll die if that leak isn't sealed," Jonas insisted, pointing to the glowing blue fluid. "Is that your blood?" The warrior hesitated, then gave what might have been a nod. "Life, fluid, powers, armor." Jonas rummaged through his toolkit, producing a tube of universal sealant designed for emergency hull breaches but effective on almost any material. "This should work temporarily. I need to apply it directly to the damaged section." After a long moment, the warrior inclined her head in what Jonas took as permission. He worked quickly, applying the sealant to the fractures in her armor. The blue fluid stopped leaking, and the erratic movements of the armor plates gradually stabilized. "Can you walk?" Jonas asked, packing up his tools. The warrior attempted to stand again, this time making it to her feet but swaying dangerously. Without thinking, Jonas moved to her side, allowing her to lean against him. "The main camp is that way," he said, pointing, "but we'll need to go around the fighting." The journey was slow and arduous. The Valthari was heavier than she looked, her armor adding considerable weight. Several times they had to stop and hide as enemy patrols passed nearby. Jonas noticed the warrior growing weaker, her steps becoming less coordinated. "Stay with me," he urged as they approached the perimeter of the coalition camp. "We're almost there." Her only response was a faint hum from her armor. As they reached the checkpoint, she suddenly went limp against him. Jonas called for help, and medical personnel rushed forward. He watched as they carried her away, her armor now completely inert, its usual subtle glow extinguished. "You brought in a Valthari?" A senior officer appeared at his side, expression stern. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Jonas blinked in confusion. "I saved her life. She was trapped in the ruins. The Valthari don't accept help, especially not from humans." The officer explained. "Their culture forbids it. There will be complications." "She was dying," Jonas said simply. "I couldn't just leave her." The officer sighed. "Get yourself checked out at medical and we'll deal with the diplomatic fallout later." But Jonas didn't go to medical. Instead, he found himself outside the isolation tent where they had taken the Valthari warrior. 2 of her kind stood guard outside, imposing figures in that same living armor, though theirs was unmarred and gleaming with power. "How is she?" Jonas asked one of the guards. The guard regarded him silently for a long moment before responding in surprisingly fluid English. "She lives. The healers work to repair her armor and flesh. Will she be okay?" "It is not your concern, human." Jonas should have left it at that. But something, curiosity, concern, or perhaps just stubbornness, kept him there. He found a spot nearby where he could see the entrance to the tent and settled in to wait. Hours passed. The camp bustled with activity as units returned from battle and others prepared to deploy. No one paid much attention to the lone engineer keeping vigil outside the Thari medical tent. As night fell, bringing a bone-deep chill to the air, Jonas remained, huddled in his jacket. He must have dozed off because he awoke to find one of the Thari guards standing over him. "You are the one who brought Kaylira from the ruins," the guard stated. Jonas nodded, getting stiffly to his feet. "Is that her name, Kaylira?" The guard didn't answer directly. "She sleeps now. The healing has begun. You should return to your kind. Will you tell her?" Jonas hesitated, not sure what he wanted to say. "Just tell her I hope she recovers quickly." The guard tilted his head slightly. "You have interfered in matters beyond your understanding, human, but your intentions appear honorable. Go now." Jonas had no choice but to obey, though he glanced back at the tent several times as he walked away, wondering about the warrior whose life he had saved. The following days were a blur of activity. The coalition forces had gained ground after the initial ambush, pushing the enemy back from the temple ruins. Jonas was busier than ever, repairing everything from communication devices to atmospheric processors. He heard nothing about Kaylira and had no opportunity to check on her condition. A week after the rescue, Jonas was summoned to the command center, an unusual occurrence for someone of his rank and position. He entered nervously, finding Captain Hendricks in discussion with several senior officers and, to his surprise, 2 Thari. "Engineer Rayner," Hendricks called, waving him forward. "Just the man we've been discussing." Jonas approached cautiously. "Sir?" "It seems you've created quite a stir among our allies," Hendricks said, gesturing to the Thari. "This is Commander Vexthal of the 7th Claw Division." One of the Thari stepped forward. Unlike the guards Jonas had seen, this one's armor bore elaborate markings and additional structures that seemed ceremonial rather than functional. "Engineer Jonas Rayner," the commander said, his translator rendering his words with surprising nuance. "You saved the life of warrior Kaylira Drenval. This action has significance." Jonas swallowed nervously. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," Vexthal stated firmly. "Not anyone. Not to a Thari. Our ways are not yours." Captain Hendricks cleared his throat. "It seems that in Thari culture, there are certain protocols when one's life is saved by another. Commander Vexthal has requested your presence at a ceremony this evening." "A ceremony?" Jonas repeated uncertainly. "The ritual of Greshaltar," Vexthal explained. "The acknowledgement of life debt. It is ancient and sacred. Your presence is not optional." Something in the commander's tone made Jonas's mouth go dry. "Of course. I'd be honored." "Good," Hendricks said, looking relieved. "Report to the Central Plaza at sundown. Dress in your formal uniform." Jonas left the command center with a sense of foreboding. He'd heard rumors about Thari customs, their rigid code of honor, their almost religious devotion to their living armor. What had he gotten himself into? The Central Plaza was transformed by sunset. Coalition flags flew alongside the angular banners of the Thari. Braziers burned with flames that shifted through impossible colors, clearly not using standard fuel. Jonas stood awkwardly in his dress uniform, which he'd rarely worn since leaving Earth 3 years ago. A small crowd had gathered, mostly high-ranking officers and a contingent of Thari warriors, their armor polished to a mirror shine. Jonas noticed that humans and Thari stood separately, with little interaction between the groups. A resonant tone rang out, silencing all conversation. From a temporary structure at the far end of the plaza emerged a procession of Thari. Their armor was different from the military variants Jonas had seen, more ornate, with flowing lines and pulsing lights that seemed to move in harmony. At the center of the procession was Kaylira. Jonas recognized her immediately, though he couldn't have explained how. Her armor had been repaired but now bore intricate patterns that glowed with inner light. She moved with grace, showing no sign of her previous injuries. The procession halted in the center of the plaza. Commander Vexthal stepped forward. "We gather to witness the Greshel Tar," he announced, his voice carrying effortlessly. "Warrior Kaelira Drenval lives because engineer Jonas Rayner acted with courage and skill. By our most ancient laws, a life preserved creates a bond that must be acknowledged." A murmur ran through the human observers. Jonas stood frozen, unsure what was expected of him. Vexthal continued. "The ritual has two parts. First, the public acknowledgement of the debt. Second, a private ceremony where the nature of repayment is determined." Kaelira stepped forward, her helmet retracting for the first time, revealing her face. Jonas caught his breath. Her skin was pale blue with subtle iridescent patterns that shifted with her expressions. Her eyes were larger than human eyes, entirely silver with no visible pupil or iris. Despite the alien features, there was a striking beauty to her face, proud and fierce. "I, Kaelira Drenval, acknowledge that my life continues because of Jonas Rayner," she stated, her voice melodic even through the translator. "By the code of Valthar, I stand in his debt until it is repaid in full measure." She knelt before Jonas, head bowed. The assembled Valthari warriors struck their chest plates once in unison, creating a thunderous sound. Jonas stood bewildered, looking to Captain Hendricks for guidance. The captain made a subtle gesture that Jonas interpreted as "say something." "I, accept your acknowledgement," Jonas managed, hoping it was appropriate. "But no repayment is necessary. I'm just glad you recovered." Kaelira looked up sharply, her silver eyes narrowing. Commander Vexthal stepped forward quickly. "The terms of repayment are not discussed in public," he said firmly. "That is for the private ceremony, which will commence immediately." Before Jonas could protest, he was ushered along with Kaelira into a smaller tent adjacent to the plaza. The entrance was sealed behind them, leaving them alone. The interior was dimly lit by floating orbs that resembled the bioluminescent fluid Jonas had seen leaking from Kaelira's armor. Cushions were arranged on the floor around a small stone pedestal. Kaelira stood rigidly, her helmet once again extended to cover her face. "The public ceremony is theater," she said, her translator rendering her words precisely. "This is the true Greshel Tar." Jonas shifted uncomfortably. "Look, I really don't need anything. In human culture, we help each other without expectation of reward. This is not about what you need," Kaelira replied, her tone suggesting this should be obvious. "It is about balance. A life debt must be repaid or both parties remain incomplete." She moved to the stone pedestal and pressed her hand against it. The pedestal began to glow with the same blue-green light as her armor. "The ritual of Greshel Tar has existed since before we traveled between stars," she explained. "When one warrior saves another, a bond is formed that transcends ordinary alliances." As she spoke, her armor began to change. The military components receded, replaced by more ceremonial elements, ornate patterns that flowed like liquid metal across her form. In ancient times, when a warrior saved another's life, they gained the right to ask for anything in return: territory, weapons, even the life of the saved warrior to be spent as they saw fit. She turned to face Jonas fully. "Our laws have evolved, but the core remains. The debt must be repaid with something of equal value to a life." Jonas swallowed nervously. "I'm not a warrior. I don't understand your customs." "No," Kaelira agreed. "You are not Valthari, but you acted with a warrior's courage when you rescued me. The debt remains." She approached him slowly, her ceremonial armor gleaming in the dim light. Up close, Jonas could see intricate designs etched into every plate, stories, perhaps, or prayers. "Jonas Rayner," she said formally. "By the code of Vilthar, I ask, what do you desire most? What would you have of me in repayment for my life?" The question hung in the air between them. Jonas's mind raced. What was he supposed to say? He didn't want anything from her, certainly nothing equal to a life. "I don't want anything," he tried again. "Really?" Kalara tilted her head, the gesture somehow conveying frustration despite her concealed face. "You must ask for something. If the debt remains unpaid, I am bound to you until it is satisfied. Such a bond would be difficult for both of us." Jonas ran a hand through his hair, flustered. This whole situation was absurd. He was just an engineer who'd happened to be in the right place at the right time. Now he was trapped in some alien ritual with consequences he didn't understand. "Fine," he said, attempting humor to diffuse the tension. "If I have to ask for something, I want you." The words left his mouth before he fully considered their implications. It was a joke, the kind of flippant remark he might make to break tension among his engineering colleagues. But as soon as he said it, he realized his mistake. Kalara went perfectly still. For several agonizing seconds, she said nothing. Then, to Jonas's horror, she knelt before him. Her hand moved to her chest plate, pressing against a central node. With a series of soft clicks, the ceremonial armor began to disengage. "Wait!" Jonas exclaimed, panic rising. "That was a joke, I didn't mean—" "I have sworn by the code," Kalara said, her voice solemn. "The armor opens when the heart is given." Plate by plate, her ceremonial armor was detaching. The pieces didn't fall away but seemed to fold into themselves, disappearing into the central chest piece. Jonas stood frozen, mortified by the misunderstanding. "Please stop," he said desperately. "I was just joking. It's something humans do when we're uncomfortable. I don't want that from you." Kalara's hands paused. Her helmet retracted, revealing her face once more. Her expression was unreadable to Jonas's human eyes, but something in the set of her mouth suggested deep offense. "You mock the Gresheltar?" Her voice was cold. "You treat a life debt as a source of amusement?" "No," Jonas protested. "I just didn't understand. In my culture, we don't have rituals like this. I didn't know what to say." "And so you chose to dishonor us both." Kalara rose to her feet, her armor rapidly reforming around her body. "I offered you everything a Vilthari can give. My service, my loyalty, even my form. And you treated it as a jest." Jonas felt sick with guilt. "I'm sorry, I truly am. I didn't understand the significance." "No," she agreed coldly. "No, you did not." Before he could say anything more, she turned and strode to the tent entrance. "The debt remains unpaid," she announced. "Until it is resolved, I am bound by oath to remain near you, though I need not interact with you. This is the way of Gresheltar when rejection occurs." With those words, she left, the tent flap falling closed behind her. Jonas stood alone, the floating lights dimming as if in response to his distress. When Jonas finally emerged from the tent, the plaza was nearly empty. A few officers lingered, giving him curious or disapproving looks. Captain Hendricks approached, his expression grim. "What happened in there, Rayner? The Vilthari delegation looks ready to withdraw from the coalition entirely." Jonas winced. "I made a mistake, sir. A cultural misunderstanding." "Fix it," Hendricks ordered bluntly. "Whatever you did, undo it. We need the Vilthari in this war." "I'll try, sir," Jonas promised, though he had no idea how to make amends for his blunder. Over the next few days, Jonas attempted to learn everything he could about Vilthari culture. He accessed what little information was available in the Coalition database and cautiously approached a Vaelthari communications officer who seemed less hostile than the others. What he discovered only made him feel worse. The ritual of Gresheltar was one of the most sacred traditions in their society. When a life was saved, the saved individual offered their savior a choice of three things: loyalty, service for a set period; knowledge, secrets or technologies normally kept from outsiders; or self, a complete surrender of autonomy, traditionally for a year and a day. When Kaelira had begun to remove her armor, she hadn't been offering just her body, as Jonas had assumed. The living armor of the Vaelthari was integrated with their nervous system, a second skin that protected not just their physical form, but aspects of their consciousness. To remove it before another was the ultimate act of trust and vulnerability, and he had laughed at it. Worse, because he had rejected her offer but provided no alternative. They were now locked in an unresolved debt bond. Kaelira was obligated to remain within a certain distance of him until the debt was settled, yet forbidden by custom from initiating contact. Jonas spotted her occasionally around the camp, always at a distance. She had resumed her military duties but was clearly isolated from her fellow Vaelthari. He tried several times to approach her, but she always moved away before he could reach her. 2 weeks after the failed ritual, Jonas was working late in the engineering bay when an alert sounded throughout the camp. Enemy forces had breached the perimeter in a surprise night attack. As non-combat personnel, Jonas was supposed to report to the designated shelter areas, but he had been in the middle of repairing a crucial communications array. Just 5 more minutes, he muttered to himself, hands steady despite the distant sounds of battle. The doors to the engineering bay slid open. Jonas looked up, expecting to see security personnel ordering him to evacuate. Instead, Kaelira stood there, fully armored in her combat configuration. "You must leave now," she stated without preamble. "The enemy targets this sector specifically." Jonas blinked in surprise. "I just need to finish this repair. Communications will be down across the Eastern Front if I don't." "They will be irrelevant if you are dead," she countered. "The debt remains unpaid. I cannot allow you to risk yourself." Understanding dawned on Jonas. "You're not here on orders. You're here because of the life debt." Kaelira said nothing, but her silence was confirmation enough. Jonas sighed and began packing his tools. "All right, I'm coming." They had just reached the door when an explosion rocked the building. The lights flickered and died, emergency lighting casting the bay in an eerie red glow. Kaelira moved with inhuman speed, positioning herself between Jonas and the direction of the blast. "We must find another exit," she said, her armor reconfiguring to enhance its defensive capabilities. They moved through the darkened corridors, Kaelira leading the way. Jonas realized she could probably see perfectly well in the darkness. Another explosion, closer this time, sent debris raining down from the ceiling. Kaelira's arm shot out, shoving Jonas against the wall and shielding him with her body as a section of ceiling collapsed where he had been standing. "Thank you," he gasped when the dust settled. "The debt grows," she responded flatly. They continued, encountering sporadic resistance, enemy soldiers who had infiltrated the building. Kaelira dispatched them efficiently, her armor morphing to produce weapons as needed. Jonas stayed close behind her, feeling simultaneously useless and grateful. They had almost reached a service exit when a final explosion brought down the entire eastern wall. Kaelira was thrown forward by the blast, landing heavily. Jonas rushed to her side. "Are you hurt?" he asked, scanning her armor for damage. "Functional," she replied, rising slowly. "But the exit is blocked." Jonas looked around desperately, then spotted a maintenance shaft. This way, he said, pulling open the access panel. It leads to the vehicle bay. The shaft was narrow, designed for maintenance drones rather than people. Jonas went first, crawling through the confined space. He glanced back to see Kaylira hesitating. Is something wrong? A Vaelthari armor does not perform optimally in confined spaces, she admitted. The living components require freedom of movement. Can you reconfigure it somehow? Jonas asked. There's no other way out. After a moment's hesitation, Kaylira nodded. Her armor began to shift, components folding inward until it resembled a sleek bodysuit rather than the bulky combat configuration. Hey, this is uncomfortable, she said, voice strained. But possible. Continue. They made slow progress through the shaft. Jonas could hear Kaylira's breathing becoming labored behind him. Finally, they reached the exit panel. Jonas pushed it open and climbed out into the vehicle bay, then turned to help Kaylira. Her armor was pulsing erratically, the blue glow fluctuating. As she emerged from the shaft, she stumbled, nearly falling. Jonas caught her, supporting her weight. Your armor is malfunctioning again, he observed worriedly. Not malfunctioning, she corrected, her voice weak. Stressed, the sustained compression disrupted the symbiotic connection. Jonas helped her to a secluded corner of the bay, behind a row of transport vehicles. What can I do? Kaylira leaned against a wall, sliding down to sit on the floor. Nothing. It will recalibrate, given time. Jonas sat beside her, watching with concern as her armor continued its erratic pulsing. After several minutes of silence, he spoke. I've been trying to understand your culture, he said quietly. The Gresheltar. What it means. Kaylira turned her head slightly toward him but said nothing. I know now that what I did was deeply offensive, Jonas continued. I didn't understand the significance of your offer. I thought... He trailed off, embarrassed. You thought I was offering only physical companionship. Kaylira finished for him. A common misconception among your kind. Yes, Jonas admitted, but now I understand it was much more than that. The armor is not merely protection, Kaylira explained, her voice steadier now. It is part of us. From birth, we are bonded to it. It grows with us, learns with us. To remove it is to reveal not just flesh, but soul. Jonas nodded, and I laughed at that. Yes. They sat in silence again. Jonas noticed that her armor was beginning to stabilize, the pulsing becoming more regular. I want to make it right, he said finally. Tell me how to resolve the debt. Kaylira regarded him silently for a long moment. It is not so simple now. The offered gift was rejected. Traditional protocol requires that you now make an offer of equal value. What could I possibly offer that would equal what you were willing to give? I do not know, she admitted. No human has ever been in this position before. The sounds of battle were fading. The attack appeared to be subsiding. Soon, they would need to rejoin their respective units. I'll think of something, Jonas promised. I won't leave this unresolved between us. For the first time, Kaylira's expression softened slightly. Perhaps you understand more than I believed. Jonas Rayner. The following day, Kaylira disappeared from the camp. Her commander informed Captain Hendricks that she had requested temporary isolation for spiritual recalibration, apparently a common practice among their kind after traumatic events. Jonas couldn't help feeling that her disappearance was his fault. The unresolved debt bond was clearly causing her distress. He needed to find a way to make amends, not just for the sake of coalition relations, but because he genuinely regretted hurting her. An idea began to form in Jonas's mind, a gesture that might demonstrate his understanding and respect for Vaelthari culture. During the rescue, he had collected several damaged pieces of Kalira's armor that had broken away. He'd kept them, intending to return them but never finding the right opportunity. Now, working late into the night, Jonas studied these fragments. The living metal was dormant but still retained some of its unique properties. Using his engineering skills and what he'd learned about Vialthari technology, he began crafting something new. It took 3 days of work, stolen between his regular duties. The result was crude by Vialthari standards, a simple chest plate and partial gauntlets made from salvaged components and augmented with Earth-based technologies. It wasn't true living armor, but it incorporated elements of both cultures. But where had Kalira gone? No one would tell him directly. But Jonas overheard rumors that she had retreated to an ancient Vialthari shrine in the temple ruins, the same area where he had first found her. Without authorization, Jonas took a transport vehicle and headed toward the ruins. The battlefield had shifted since the initial ambush, and the temple area was now a no-man's land. Not actively contested, but not secured either. He navigated carefully through the ruins, following faint energy signatures that his scanner detected, similar to the resonance of Vialthari armor. The trail led him deeper into the complex than he had ventured before, to a structure that had remained largely intact despite the surrounding devastation. The entrance was marked with symbols similar to those he'd seen on ceremonial Vialthari armor. Jonas hesitated, then called out, "Kalira, it's Jonas. I need to speak with you." Silence answered him. He waited, then called again. "I know you're here. I know about the shrine. Please, just give me a chance to make this right." After what seemed an eternity, a figure emerged from the shadows of the entrance. Kalira wore a simplified version of her armor, more like a robe than the full combat or ceremonial configurations he'd seen before. "You should not be here," she said, though there was more resignation than anger in her tone. "This place is sacred to my people." "I know," Jonas replied, remaining where he stood. "But our unfinished business affects both of us. I want to resolve it." Kalira studied him for a long moment. "You have brought something," she observed, noticing the bundle he carried. Jonas nodded. "A gesture of understanding. May I approach?" After a slight hesitation, she nodded. Jonas walked forward slowly, stopping a respectful distance away. He unwrapped the bundle, revealing the makeshift armor he had created. "I know it's not proper Vialthari armor," he said quickly. "It's just what I could make with limited resources and knowledge. But I wanted to show that I understand now, the significance of what you offered." Kalira approached cautiously, examining the creation. Her fingers traced the patterns Jonas had etched into the metal, attempting to replicate the symbols he'd seen on her ceremonial armor. "You made this from my damaged armor?" she asked, and surprise evident in her voice. "Yes, I salvaged what I could when I rescued you. I've integrated it with human technology." Jonas swallowed nervously. "It's a bridge between our two cultures, like what I should have offered during the Greshel Tar." Kalira picked up the chest plate, turning it over in her hands. "This is unexpected." "There's more," Jonas said. Taking a deep breath, he knelt before her, assuming the formal posture he'd seen her take during the ritual. "Kalira Drenval, if you were to ask me now what I desire most, my answer would be genuine. I would say that I want to know you not out of obligation or debt, but because I respect your courage and honor." Kalira went very still. "You mock the ritual again?" "No," Jonas said firmly. "This time, I understand what I'm saying. I'm not asking for what you offered before. I'm offering something myself, a pledge to learn from you, to understand your ways. And in return, perhaps you might learn something of mine." For a long moment, Kalira said nothing. Then, to Jonas's surprise, the corner of her mouth curved upward, the first smile he had seen from her. "Enter the shrine," she said finally. "It is a place of truth. There, we will complete what was begun." The interior of the shrine was illuminated by the same bioluminescent substance that powered Vailthari armor. Pools of glowing liquid cast rippling patterns across ancient stone walls covered in intricate carvings. At the center stood a simple pedestal, similar to the one from the ritual tent but clearly much older. "This is one of the few remaining shrines of the armor givers," Kalira explained, her voice hushed. "The ancient ones who first bonded our species with the living metal. Here, vows are made that cannot be broken." She placed the armor Jonas had created on the pedestal. It looked crude and primitive compared to the ancient grandeur of the shrine, but Kalira treated it with reverence. "You have created something unique," she said. "Neither fully Vailthari nor fully human. Perhaps this is fitting for the bond between us." "What happens now?" Jonas asked, uncertain. Kalira turned to face him. "Now we speak truth, without ceremony or misunderstanding. The debt remains unpaid. What would you have of me, Jonas Rayner?" Jonas took a deep breath. This time, there would be no jokes, no evasions. "When I found you in the ruins, I didn't know who or what you were. I only knew someone needed help. Everything that followed, the ritual, the debt, it all seemed so formal and complicated compared to that simple moment." He stepped closer to her. "If you ask me what I want most, here's my honest answer. I want to know you, Kalira. Not as a debt-bound warrior or an alien ally, but as a person. I want to understand your world, your beliefs. And I want you to know me, not as someone you owe, but as someone who respects you." Kalira's silver eyes studied him intently. "You speak of friendship. I speak of possibility," Jonas corrected gently. "Friendship, yes, perhaps more, in time. But whatever grows between us should do so freely, not because of obligation." "And the debt?" she asked. "By our laws, it must be balanced." Jonas considered this. What if we both agree to a mutual debt? You saved my life during the attack as much as I saved yours in the ruins. Let us both acknowledge that we are connected now, but neither owes the other." Kalira was silent for a long moment. Then she placed her hand on the pedestal beside the armor Jonas had created. "In the old tales," she said softly, "there is a rare form of Greshaltar called the Mirror Debt, where two warriors save each other in the same battle. Neither owes, yet both are bound." "Is that possible for us?" Jonas asked hopefully. "It has never been done between Vailthari and human," she admitted. "But then, much of what has passed between us is without precedent." She gestured to the armor. "Put it on." Jonas blinked in surprise. "What?" "The armor you created and put it on. If we are to enact the mirror debt, both must wear the symbols of their bond." Hesitantly, Jonas picked up the chest plate and gauntlets. They were heavier than they looked. With Kalira's help, he fastened them over his uniform. The metal was cool against his skin, but gradually warmed. "It feels alive," he said with wonder. "It remembers," Kalira explained. "The fragments retain echoes of their former purpose." Once the makeshift armor was in place, Kalira stepped back. Her own armor began to shift, reconfiguring into what Jonas recognized as her ceremonial form. But this time, there was a subtle difference, patterns that resembled the etchings he had made on his creation. "The armor adapts," she said, noting his observation. "It recognizes the intent of your gift." She extended her hand, palm up. "Jonas Rayner, I acknowledge that my life continues because of you. By the mirror debt, I offer not servitude but partnership. Jonas placed his hand in hers. The gauntlet he wore seemed to resonate with her armor, a faint hum passing between them. Lira Drenval, I acknowledge that my life continues because of you. I offer the same, partnership, freely given. As their hands clasped, the bioluminescent pools around the shrine pulsed brighter. Lira's armor began to shift again, plates retracting from her face and hands. But this time, the movement was controlled, deliberate, not an offering of submission but a gesture of trust. The true meaning of removing armor, she explained, is not surrender but connection. We shield ourselves from the world, from each other. To lower those shields is the beginning of understanding. Jonas looked down at his crude gauntlets, then back at Lira's partially revealed form. I don't have much armor to remove, he said with a small smile. But I understand the meaning. He unclasped the chest plate, setting it carefully on the pedestal beside them. No shields between us, no debt, no obligation, just truth. Lira's silver eyes seemed to glow in the dim light of the shrine. So it is done. The mirror debt is acknowledged. Their hands remained clasped, human fingers intertwined with the partially armored hand of a Vailthari warrior. Around them, the ancient shrine pulsed with light, as if approving their unconventional bond. What happens now? Jonas asked quietly. Now. Lira tilted her head, a gesture he was beginning to recognize as thoughtful consideration. Now we return to our duties. There is still a war, but we return changed, connected. And afterward? Jonas couldn't help asking. When the fighting is done? For the second time, Lira smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her alien features into something Jonas found inexplicably beautiful. Afterward, she said, we discover what it means for a human and a Vailthari to walk a shared path. It has never been done before. I like the sound of that, Jonas replied, smiling in return. Something new. As they left the shrine together, the first light of dawn was breaking over the horizon. The war continued around them. Distant explosions marked ongoing battles, and the sky was scarred with the contrails of orbital engagements. But between them, something had changed. Not the removal of all barriers. Those would fall gradually with time and trust, but the acknowledgement that such removal was possible. Lira paused at the entrance to the ruins, looking out at the battlefield that had brought them together. Among my people there is a saying, the strongest armor is that which knows when to yield. Jonas nodded, understanding. On Earth we say something similar. The bravest heart is one that dares to be vulnerable. Perhaps our peoples are not so different after all, Lira observed. Perhaps not, Jonas agreed. And where differences remain, we'll build bridges like that makeshift armor until we understand each other. Lira touched the ceremonial plates of her armor, which still bore the echoes of Jonas's design. The war will end someday. What we have begun here may endure long after. I hope so, Jonas said simply. They walked side by side toward the coalition camp, a human engineer and a Vailthari warrior, neither fully armored nor completely exposed. Between them lay not obligation but possibility, not debt but promise. In a galaxy torn by conflict, they had found something worth preserving, the courage to lower one's shields and truly see another. And it had all begun with a misunderstood joke and the removal of armor, both literal and metaphorical. Jonas smiled at the thought. Sometimes the universe had a strange sense of humor after all.